Welcome back to another episode of Pi for Thought, a podcast by the Indian Journal of Projects, Infrastructure and Energy Law. Today, we're going to talk about energy law. And for his insight, we have Mr. Ankit Rajgarhia. He has worked with IJPIEL on renewable energy, and he is a principal associate at Karanjawala Co. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Anish, for having me here.
So, to understand exactly where you're coming from, could you tell us what a typical day at work looks like for you?
Okay, so I have been practicing for over a decade now. Throughout these many years, my duties have shifted, but overall schedule has been similar. When I want to say that the overall schedule has been similar, that means my timing has been similar. My role has differed, but yes, I get up in the morning around 6 o'clock. I reach court well in advance, that is around 9:30 when the court starts at 10:30. And typically, I'm talking about High Court. A district court starts at 10 o'clock. So, way in advance, I reach the court. In the early years of my practice, in the first half of my day, I used to reach the court on time and perform the duties assigned. Later, return to the office and go for arbitration, then client meeting, and now that I see it, all the time invested in in those days is now fruitful. The schedule is more or less the same. However, with the time, new additional responsibilities have been allotted to me. By saying new responsibility, that means I am giving the client more and more privilege of making the strategy in the matter. That means I'm giving more confidence to the client. If the client is happy with the strategy based, we are home thereafter.
Yeah.
So it is all the entire thing is with regard to the strategy making.
Got it. That makes sense, sir. With regards to strategy, since we're talking about energy law and since that is what you work with at IJPIL, I just wanted to ask you, how compliant should an individual or a legal person be with their projects with the energy laws in India in mind?
So, Anish, there are two, three things which we need to keep in mind. Energy law is the most diversified sector since it is divided into two groupings, renewable energy and non renewable energy. When we look at renewable energy and taking the example of the solar energy laws, we can see that multiple statutes govern different aspects of solar energy. An Electricity Act, which governs the majority aspect of solar energy. The National Electricity Policy of 2005 sheds light on how to conserve such energies. The National Tariff Policy 2006 talks about the renewable purchase obligations. Now, we are talking about two different facets of energy laws. The energy industry is so vast that if in it the aspects are many folds, that means the law must have the veracity and permits and consent some of who to get into this kind of law. That means a person needs to apply for permits and also for the consents. So, what are the consents? What are the permits that you are required? Approximately from the government or the laws say regarding basically presently talking about renewable energy. See, copies of permit, copies of consent, license, and other authorities and authorization have to be applied from the authority. As per the Energy Act 2003, the authorities have been mentioned. License have to be obtained. That means power plant has to have the factory which is operating as a energy plant, energy project, have to apply for the license from the government. Approvals for laying the transmission lines, because now you cannot open the entire thing without applying for the permissions.
Obviously,
And
yeah.
whether you are compliant enough to apply for that permission has to be governed by the government. who has framed the act itself. Then labor registrations. People who are applying for it, are they labor compliant or not? Coal linkage or supply of coal linkage has to be there. There are other miscellaneous permits which are also required with regard to now. Now I ask myself this question: that can you start an energy plant or a project in India without having the requisite permission? The answer is no. Therefore, there are people who actually sees whether you are energy compliant in India. They have a specialization. They check what all permits are there, and and I would request people who would actually want to start an energy project, energy plant, should also do a basic research on how energy plant can be started in India with all complicit laws. You cannot miss one law or the other law. Once you start a particular project, your basics should be strong. That means you should be energy compliant project. When you call yourself energy compliant project, you have to have the permissions from the government. Now, if they fall in any of such compliances, let's say someone falls, if you're not able to follow some of the compliances, what happens then? The act itself lays down the procedure with regard to that.
Okay.
Then there are various penalties which can be imposed. For example, the Energy Act has provision which with respect to non compliance with directions issued by the state board. Now, if you don't comply, you have to pay the penalty. So, as per Section 28 of the Electricity Act, it imposes a penalty not exceeding 5 lakhs, or organizations or individuals who have failed to comply with the directions issued by the state board. Moreover, 106, section 106 also talks about penalties if a person fails to comply with the directions issued.
Got it.
And this section contains the penal provisions as well. So imprisonment along with a 1 lakh rupees. So that's why I started off my entire topic by saying that you have to be energy compliant project. That means you have to go to the basic. You have to see the act as per your own requirements. You have to apply to the government. You gain that application. Once your application is approved, only beyond that you should start. Of course, energy projects are amazing. It is a new trend. It has to start, but you can't disobey the act itself per se. So, and there are professionals who are seeing the compliances that are required or not required. So kindly go to them, ask their advices, approach, and thereafter go for it.
That makes sense. Considering how important energy laws and energy processes are becoming in India with the recent consideration of global warming and the need for renewable energy. Like we were talking about the point of no return, like scientifically and globally. Considering the various issues that you were talking about with compliance, what do you think the various energy laws that you spoke of in India, at least, get right?
So energy regulations in India are fast evolving. We all know that. To meet the needs of the sector, and this trend is basically seen across the world. Now today, when I talk about international organizations, see all energy laws, etc., we have adopted it from the abroad. That means UK, US. There are certain energy laws because they are the people who started this trend, and we are following it in a way. So basically, several international organizations, including International Energy Agency, that is called IEA, commends that India for its continuous economic liberalization and growing use of market-based technology, as well as aggressive advance in energy sector. Now they have started recognizing us. The increased access of all segments of Indian population to accessible resources has now raised living standards with international framework needed to attract more investment to fulfill the country's growing energy demands. Now, I say this with utmost responsibility. I say that one part of our weakness is population, the other part of our strength is population.
Fair enough.
So it is for people to use it in a right frame of mind and right direction. When I say population is a very, very good thing in with regard to energy laws, because we are in need of energy law because of globalization, etc., etc. Therefore, we have laborers who can perform, who can do all these work. Because when you are talking about energy project, it is a thing which requires people around. It requires people to build things. So therefore, I'm talking about population because in India has almost the third largest. So we have to use it in a right direction, in a right frame of mind.
Yeah.
The increased access of all segments of the Indian population to accessible resources has now raised living standards with the international demands. IEA, which I just spoke about, International Energy Agency, applauds the government's decision to encourage private sector involvement in coal mining and to expand retail oil and gas markets throughout the world. So earlier we were not compliant. Now the trend has changed. Now we have started becoming compliant, and international agencies have started applauding us with regard to the same. The construction of functional energy markets will will encourage economic stability in the management of the electricity, gas, power sector, which is critical to energy security. The Indian energy will be used to achieve these goals. Now, when I say this, until unless we are compliant enough, which I spoke right now, we will not be able to achieve this. The energy business has gone a long way in the last 2 decades. Now, since last 2 decades, the government has started putting in lot of effort in energy law, started making a lot of compliances. The energy market is becoming more accessible to private sector. Earlier, it used to be public sector. Now they have started doing private sector engagements as well, improved competitions, and accordingly, as a result, today's government interference is much lesser than what it used to be. Therefore, it is giving you a upper hand that if you are compliant, you go for it. That's the slogan that the government is now adopting.
Got it.
The other thing that I wanted to speak about in this particular topic is in electricity generation, the transmission system becomes more reliable each year. Now, because it is kind of a technology, right?
Yeah.
So when we use our iPhones or when we use our Androids, we advance every time. Why is there a new set of iPhones or the Androids or the Samsungs, which comes into the market? Because the the new one is more advanced than the previous one.
Yeah.
Similarly, here we are evolving. It is a very, very new thing for us, and we are evolving every year, year by year. We are changing laws year by year.
Yeah.
We are learning from our mistakes. We are changing it as and when we are seeing a shortfall. So, in relation to Electricity Act of 2003, India's electricity business was totally rebuilt, but the anticipated outcomes were unexpected. The reorganization of SEBs, commercialization of producing and distributing enterprises, corporations, open access, various licenses, and so on and so on. We were never compliant. Now, India sector was totally reformed. Now we say, as PM Modi says, build in India, make in India, for yourself, for your own people. The sectors will grow much more in more 20 years. We have only seen 20 years in this. So now, if we are compliant, if we are able to learn, if we are able to grow, we will grow much higher in 20 more years.
I'm hearing that following trends in the globalization of energy laws is essentially the path that we have taken and we must continue to take. And that makes sense for the most part. And I think I have to ask the other side of the coin. And you were talking about shortfalls. What do you think the energy laws in India do not get right? Or where do you think the shortfalls in the Indian energy laws are?
Energy laws in India is a very new thing.
It's very nascent, yeah.
When, when we teach a toddler about how to walk, we are at that stage. For me to comment upon how what are the shortfalls at this stage would be a task, but yes, we are going in a right path. India has adopted it from US, UK.
Yeah.
They were the people who started using it. Now we have started using it in last 2 decades, and it is a very new law. 2003 law is a very new law.
Yeah,
We have
yeah.
seen 20 years of this law. That's about it. Even the courts today are getting adopted with the legal framework, the legislation which has been created as per the act.
Mm-hmm.
So they are also interpreting. If you search on SCC or a Manupatra or any legal site regarding any of the case laws with regard to energy law, you will not find much presently.
I think that's where I wanted to think about it. Like we're talking about following the global trend. We're talking about courts adopting the global precedent. So and you spoke about the International Energy Association. So I mean, I have to ask, like, how do you think the Indian laws fare against or with the global standard?
Indian energy choices are significant presently. They have direct and far reaching consequences for the livings of a growing population. I want to connect everything to the population because that's our strength and that's our weakness,
Yeah.
as well as significant indirect consequences for the rest of the world due to their impact on energy market. Now, when I say this, the rise of India as a global industrial power has significant consequences for coal, gas markets. India leads global oil consumption growth because it is one of the most populated country. It leads global oil consumption growth and has become uh, amongst the one of the fastest growing natural gas market in the world. From having nothing in 20 years, we have
Yeah.
become one of the market leading trend in this.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, India is one of the few sources of coal's growth in situation primary for industrial purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to just connect this to a pandemic which we just saw. India having energy resources right in place and actually moving towards the right place
Mm-hmm.
actually helped in your pandemic as well. The resources that we were using,
Yeah.
at that point of time, people were absolutely at their home. Absolutely, they did not have work. Absolutely, they did not have anything.
Yeah.
But this particular energy laws helped us. People had resourceable energy to actually take care of people. That's the usage of this. That's the benefit of this. India's fast increased demand of flexibility in the functioning of its power system poses a potential threat to its electrical systems
Mm-hmm.
and as well as electrical securities.
Yeah.
The weak financial health poses an additional systematic danger. Reforming the sector will need increasing billing and collection efficiency as well as lowering technical and commercial losses.
Mm-hmm.
People were at home, the electricity charges increased 3 times
Ooh,
when they were at home. When I say
makes sense.
this, these problems, it is not only restricted to India. All
Yeah.
developed countries have this problem. There are multiple factors contribute to these crises, such lack of availability of resources and external factors too, like Ukraine, Russia war. We all know that. Question was how do the international standard and Indian standard go akin? I will
Yeah.
frame it like that accordingly. So, you need these kind of laws, you need these kind of people to think about it in
Mm-hmm.
a logical conclusion. They need to take it out. That's what I want to say with regard to this.
Amazing.
I would like to thank you for taking some time to listen to me with regard to this and my opinion. And this is entirely my opinion and my way I look at things.
Yeah.
My message to my listeners is that many of you, while practicing law, may feel that the field of law is very, very difficult, may feel giving it up.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It is interesting because there are new acts which are coming into play. You have to learn new acts and you have to perform not only for you, for the entire population of the country.
Yeah.
So that is my last take on this entire episode.
Thank you so much for your valuable insight, sir. Honestly, like you're setting like this idealistic standard for energy laws, and I'm pretty sure sincerely hope that this country is going to adopt said standards. That said, thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Pie for Thought. If you have any feedback, if you want to contribute to these discussions, please find the email in the description and send us a word. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day.